Your Honor, this is ridiculous. The deep, confident voice of Gregory Lancaster, one of the most renowned and ruthless lawyers in the state, echoed through the grand courtroom. He smirked as he adjusted his expensive suit, then glanced over at the woman standing across from him, Mia Carter, a struggling single mother in an outdated blazer and scuffed shoes. Gregory let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. Are we really wasting court time on this? A woman like her standing here trying to challenge my client? This is nothing but an act of desperation. The courtroom murmured. Gregory's reputation preceded him. He was known for never losing, for tearing apart anyone who dared to stand in his way. He had defended CEOs, billionaires, and elite clients, and now he was representing Nathan Sterling, a powerful real estate mogul being sued for wrongful eviction. Mia, standing alone without an attorney, clutched a stack of worn-out papers in her trembling hands. Her little boy, Oliver, no older than 7, sat on the courtroom bench behind her, his innocent eyes wide with worry. Gregory took a step forward, gesturing toward Mia with amusement. Your Honor, let's be honest, this woman has no case, no legal background, no high-profile attorney, nothing but baseless accusations. Frankly, I find it... He let out another sharp laugh. Comical. The courtroom chuckled with him, some smirking while others exchanged knowing glances. After all, who could stand against Gregory Lancaster and win? Mia, however, didn't flinch. She took a deep breath, her grip on the papers tightening. Then, in a steady, unwavering voice, she said something that made the entire courtroom fall silent. Mr. Lancaster, you seem very confident for a man who just lost his case. A sharp hush fell over the room. Gregory's smirk faltered. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Mia took a step closer, her confidence rising. That's right. You lost. Because the evidence I just submitted to the court proves beyond a doubt that Nathan Sterling forged legal documents to force dozens of families, including mine, out of their homes. The judge raised an eyebrow and turned to his clerk, who had just received the stack of documents Mia handed over. The clerk scanned the first few pages, eyes widening in shock. He quickly handed them to the judge. Gregory shifted in place, his fingers twitching. That's impossible. Mia didn't stop. These are copies of emails and bank transfers linking your client to illegal deals, bribing city officials to approve unlawful evictions. And as of this morning, I have signed affidavits from 3 former employees who were forced to process fraudulent paperwork under your client's orders. The judge, now flipping through the documents, suddenly straightened in his chair. His gaze hardened as he turned to Gregory. Mr. Lancaster, is your client aware of these allegations? Gregory swallowed, his smirk completely gone. He shot a glance toward Nathan Sterling, who had gone pale at the defense table. The billionaire's hands shook as he leaned toward Gregory and whispered something urgent. Mia's voice rang out again, steady and strong. Your Honor, my case isn't baseless. My evidence is real, and it's enough to put Mr. Sterling and anyone who helped him behind bars. The entire courtroom gasped. Gregory's hands curled into fists. For the first time in his career, he felt something he never had before: fear. A heavy silence hung over the courtroom as the judge examined the documents with furrowed brows. Gregory Lancaster, usually composed and in control, found his grip tightening around the edge of the defense table. This wasn't just a desperate plea from a struggling mother. This was real. Damning evidence. Nathan Sterling, his billionaire client, sat frozen beside him, sweat beading on his forehead. Mr. Lancaster, the judge's voice cut through the tension, do you have a response to these claims? Gregory forced a smirk, but it was weaker this time. Your Honor, I find it hard to believe that... Your Honor, Mia interrupted, her voice calm but firm. Before Mr. Lancaster continues, I have something else. She turned and gestured toward the doors of the courtroom. A moment later, they swung open. A woman in a crisp grey suit strode in, her high heels clicking against the polished floor. The gallery murmured as the woman approached Mia's side, carrying a thick folder of documents. "Your Honor," she said, handing a set of papers to the clerk. "I am Rebecca Coleman, senior investigator with the State Attorney's Office. We've been conducting an independent investigation into Mr. Sterling's business practices, and these documents confirm what Ms. Carter has just presented." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Gregory's jaw clenched. An active investigation? "This is absurd," he snapped. "If there was an investigation, we would have known about it." Rebecca turned to him with a piercing gaze. "You didn't know about it, Mr. Lancaster, because it started after several whistleblowers, former employees of your client, came forward. And with Ms. Carter's newly submitted evidence, we now have enough to file formal charges." Mia, standing tall, looked Gregory in the eyes. "Still laughing?" Gregory had no retort. The judge adjusted his glasses, his face growing more serious. "I need a recess to review these documents. Court is adjourned for 30 minutes. He banged his gavel, and the courtroom erupted into murmurs. Gregory turned sharply to Nathan Sterling. "Did you know about this?" he hissed. Nathan's hands were shaking as he pulled at his collar. "You told me I'd win this case," he whispered furiously. "I don't pay you millions to lose." Gregory clenched his teeth. He was the best. He never lost. But for the first time in his career, it felt like the ground was slipping out from under him. And worst of all, it was because of a struggling single mother. Gregory Lancaster stormed out of the courtroom, his mind racing. This was supposed to be a simple case. A struggling single mother suing a billionaire. Laughable. And yet, here he was, blindsided by evidence he hadn't seen coming. Nathan Sterling followed closely behind, gripping Gregory's arm. "Fix this," he hissed. "I don't care what it takes. Do something." Gregory yanked his arm free, his nostrils flaring. "This isn't just a civil suit anymore, Nathan. If the state attorney's office is involved, you're looking at criminal charges." Sterling's face paled. "You don't understand. If I go down, you go down with me." Gregory's jaw tightened. He prided himself on winning, on always being the smartest man in the room. But right now, the room was shifting in favor of the one person he had mocked. He turned back toward the courtroom, straightening his tie. "Not if I can help it." Back inside, Mia sat quietly on the plaintiff's side of the courtroom, her hands resting on the table. Oliver, watching her from the front row, gave her a small, encouraging smile. She smiled back, heart pounding. Rebecca Coleman leaned toward her. "They're rattled," she whispered, "but expect one last trick from Lancaster. He's not the type to surrender." Mia nodded. She had come prepared. The courtroom doors swung open and Gregory strode back in, his face calm. Too calm. He stood before the judge. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I would like to present new evidence that will completely dismantle Ms. Carter's claims." A hushed murmur ran through the crowd. Mia narrowed her eyes. "Here it comes," she muttered. Gregory pulled out a folder and handed it to the clerk. "These documents show that Ms. Carter's lease was never formally renewed. In other words, she was occupying the apartment illegally." Mia's stomach clenched. Gregory smirked. "Which means, Your Honor, that her entire case is based on false pretenses. She had no legal right to be there in the first place." A wave of murmurs filled the courtroom. Mia turned toward Rebecca, who flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable. "Well?" Mia whispered. Rebecca's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "He just made a huge mistake." Mia exhaled, bracing herself. "Let's end this." Mia sat up straighter as the judge reviewed the documents Gregory had smugly presented. The air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation. The judge adjusted his glasses and peered at Gregory. "Mr. Lancaster, you're claiming that Ms. Carter was occupying the apartment illegally?" Gregory nodded confidently. "Yes, Your Honor. Her lease expired 6 months before she was evicted. She had no legal standing to challenge my client." A murmur rippled through the courtroom, and Mia's stomach twisted. If this was true, everything could fall apart. But Rebecca Coleman, the state investigator, remained completely unfazed. "Your Honor," she said, standing up, "with all due respect, I'd like to present a counter-argument." The judge gestured for her to proceed. Rebecca walked to the clerk's table, retrieving a document from her own folder. "The defense is correct that Ms. Carter's lease expired. However," she turned to Gregory with a piercing look, "they failed to mention that Mr. Sterling's company continued to accept rent from her every month after the lease expired." Gasps spread through the courtroom. Mia's eyes widened. Of course, she had the receipts, the bank transactions. She had been paying rent all along. Rebecca continued, her voice unwavering. "Under state law, if a landlord continues to accept rent after a lease expires, it creates a tenancy at will, which means Ms. Carter was legally allowed to stay in that apartment. And when she was forcibly evicted, it was not only unlawful, but also a direct violation of tenant rights." The courtroom exploded into whispers. The judge turned back to Gregory, his expression icy. "Is this true, Mr. Lancaster?" Gregory opened his mouth, but no words came out. Mia, sensing the momentum shifting, took a deep breath. "Your Honor, I have bank statements proving I continued paying rent for 6 months. I was evicted despite making every payment." The judge took the papers Rebecca handed him and flipped through them. His frown deepened. "Mr. Lancaster," he said, voice now sharp with authority, "did your client knowingly continue to take rent from Ms. Carter after her lease expired?" Gregory clenched his fists. His face was beet red. Nathan Sterling, sitting beside him, looked ready to faint. The judge set the papers down. Boom! The case had turned. "This changes everything," he declared. Mia exhaled. She had won this round. But the real battle wasn't over yet. Gregory Lancaster's smirk had completely vanished. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as the weight of the judge's words sank in. "This changes everything." Nathan Sterling's fingers tapped anxiously against the polished table. "Do something," he whispered sharply to Gregory. "Fix this." But Gregory had nothing to say. The judge removed his glasses and rubbed his temples. "Given this revelation, I am inclined to reconsider the validity of Ms. Carter's claims. In fact," he turned toward Rebecca Coleman, "this may warrant further legal action against Mr. Sterling for unlawful eviction and potential fraud." Mia swallowed hard, her heart racing. Could this really be happening? Sterling suddenly stood up. "Your Honor, this is outrageous! You can't just take her word over mine." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Sterling, sit down. Your attorney will speak for you." But the billionaire was unraveling. He had spent years crushing people like Mia, using his wealth to silence them. This wasn't supposed to happen. Gregory grabbed Sterling's sleeve and yanked him back into his seat. "Shut up," he hissed through gritted teeth. Mia took a deep breath and stood. "Your Honor, may I say something?" The judge nodded. "Proceed." Mia turned to face the entire courtroom. "I never wanted to be here. I never wanted to fight a legal battle against a billionaire. All I wanted was a safe home for my son, a place where we could build our lives without fear. But instead, I was thrown out like garbage. I lost my job, my son suffered, and I was laughed at in this very courtroom." She turned to Gregory. "By him." Gregory's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Mia took a step forward, her voice unwavering. "People like Nathan Sterling believe they're untouchable. They think money and power can erase their wrongdoings. But today, we've proved something important. Justice is still alive. A roar of applause erupted from the gallery. Even the court officers struggled to maintain order as people clapped and murmured in agreement. Gregory's fists clenched at his sides. He had lost, and worse, he had lost to her. The judge banged his gavel twice, signaling for silence. "Ms. Carter," he said, "your courage today is commendable. Given the evidence presented, I am ruling in your favor." Mia felt her knees go weak. "The eviction was unlawful, and you are entitled to damages. Additionally, Mr. Sterling's company will be subject to further investigation." Sterling shot up from his chair. "You can't do this. I am Nathan Sterling. I have—" The judge slammed his gavel. "One more word, Mr. Sterling, and you'll be held in contempt." Sterling's mouth snapped shut, his face turning ghostly pale. Mia covered her mouth with her hands as tears welled in her eyes. She had won. She turned to Oliver, who grinned and gave her a thumbs up. Gregory Lancaster exhaled sharply, shoulders sagging. His career had taken a massive blow today. The judge's final words echoed in his mind. "This changes everything." And for the first time in his career, Gregory felt powerless. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around Mia. "How does it feel to take down a billionaire?" one asked. "What's next for you?" another chimed in. Mia took a deep breath, looking up at the sky. The sun was shining. The air felt lighter. She turned to the cameras with a soft smile. "I'm going home to my son." With that, she walked away, not as a victim, but as a fighter who had reclaimed her life. And behind her, Gregory Lancaster and Nathan Sterling watched in silence, knowing they had underestimated the wrong woman.